Welcome to episode 68 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So this week in our Would You Rather questions, it's actually kind of a funny one because I'm sure everybody has books like this of each kind, really. But it's, would you rather like a book that everyone hates or hate a book that everyone likes? So, like, immediately for both of us, Cruel Prince comes to mind.
Yes! And it was literally the first book I thought of.
And, like, I read the first one and I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and there's so much hype behind it. And then I had bought the next ones, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to read it anyway. And I read, like, the beginning of the first one, and I was like, I don't care. Just don't care.
Yes. And we are very sorry for those that like it.
Yeah. And, yeah, I understand why people like it and the tropes that, like, people have talked about that are in it. I'm like, these are tropes that I love. Why don't I love this book?
Yeah.
But,
do you know what my issue is with it? The guy goes too far, for one. Like, he goes too far in his torture of Jude. I think that's her name.
In the first book?
Like, in the first book,
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
In the first book, he's, like, a jackass towards her, and he takes it too far, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, secondly, I just don't like Jude. She's not likable enough for me to root for her.
Yeah.
So, like, and then her sister is an asshole.
Yeah, that whole thing was...
That whole thing was ridiculous. So I just, like, I didn't find anybody in the books that I enjoyed enough to keep reading.
I just find it so hard because, like, and I think it's the age of the characters, and it is very much like school bullying, which is triggering anyway.
Yes.
It's like, so that really turned me off from it because I was like, oh, I know how that feels, and that is not, like, that's not, I can't read about this.
Yeah, and it's not like the normal, like, you know how when they're like, oh, if he's mean to you, it's because he likes you. No, he legit tries to kill her.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, there's too much to it, but it's like, that, thinking about it, though, so this week, in the book we're reading, I'm pissed at the main guy character because he goes soft. He's very soft this week, and I'm like... Why are you so soft? Why can't you be the villain? I want you to stay a villain. So, like, so I know Cruel Prince has, like, the tropes of books that I should like. But anyway.
My issue is that, especially when they're books that, like, are really popular and I don't like them, I always feel like it's a writing issue.
Like, what do you mean? Sorry.
Like, as in, like, maybe, like, they're self-published.
Oh, okay.
Or an online publisher or something. Like, I just feel like you can tell when someone has a good editor versus a not good editor.
I get that, yeah.
And for some reason, I can read one of those crappy online books that are self-published. I can. And in my head, I know it's terribly written, but I can get behind the story sometimes and I can look past it. However, like, books that are super popular that everybody is in love with, I just don't understand how everybody can look past it. Like, in my mind, I feel like if it's gonna get global popularity, it should be written well. And it should be edited well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I find that here lately, sometimes books gain all of this popularity and they are not edited to their full potential.
Yeah. I find that I can look past it. Like, I don't notice it as much, and I think it's because I don't have, like, English background like you do. Like, I don't always notice when books are very terribly written. What I do notice in books is when things get repetitive, and that starts annoying me. Like, Sarah J Maas does have a few as well, where she's like strikes like an asp, and you're like, please stop. Or like picking the lint off. Like, there's little things, and like it just kind of kicks me out of the book because I'm like, you've said this a million times and I don't care. It's like, I don't know. But yeah, that doesn't make me hate a book or anything. It's just something I notice about writing. But like, I find I don't really notice if a book is poorly written. Like, everyone after Twilight was like, oh, it's so poorly written. And I was like, oh, I didn't notice.
I actually didn't find it that poorly written, though. In terms of the writing, I didn't find it that bad. I think a lot of people had issues with the ideas of it, like the whole sparkly vampire thing.
Oh, for sure.
Criticizing. I actually don't think, and like, remember in New Moon when she just had the months on the page, and
that still gives me chills.
That was good. Like, that was a great idea.
Yeah.
That was not poor writing. Like, I stand by that. I don't think that Twilight was poorly written. I think the ideas were cringy for people.
Yes, I get that. But a lot of people did say it was poorly written. Like, I have heard that complaint. But I like...
Oh, I have too. But I don't think in terms of, like, editing and actual writing, I don't think it was bad.
Okay.
I just think the ideas for people were laughable, and therefore they said, oh, this sucks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes more sense, because I was like, I don't see this as badly written. Like, I didn't really understand. But yeah. We've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent and not at all talking about the question at hand.
Would you rather?
Yeah. So, what would you rather? Love a book everyone hates, or hate a book that everyone loves?
I would rather like a book that everyone hates, personally, because I get too frustrated when I dislike a book that everyone loves. It's happened.
Yeah.
And it really bothers me, and I want to just be like, why do you like this? What about this is good?
Yeah. It feels like you're like left out of it. You're like, I don't understand why my brain doesn't work like...
Yeah, but if I like a book everyone hates, one, I don't have to tell people I like it. Like when Twilight came out and was first getting all of its hate. I didn't have to tell people I read it and I liked it. Yeah. Now, I don't give a shit.
Well, like, that's the thing I think that makes this easier, is I just don't give a shit anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then too, like, at least if I like a book that someone else dislikes, I could argue my point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can argue my point
the other way too, but yeah.
But it's harder to change someone's mind when they already like something.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's harder to sway someone towards the dislike than it is to persuade someone that dislikes something into liking it.
I find it weird because, like, for the same reason as you, basically, like, I would rather like a book that everyone hates, because, like, Twilight, I still like them. I was reading the, like, gender bender one not too long ago. And I still like Twilight. It is super cringy, and I hate some of the stuff in the last book, but I still stand by that first book 100%. And I know, like, a lot of people, it's kind of coming back around, I think. A lot of people are, like, it was just not cool to like it for a while, and I think people stopped outwardly expressing that they liked it, blah, blah, blah. So that's a bit different. But I find when you hate a book everyone likes, it really does feel like you're missing out on something. And, like, there are so many books that we found and love that I'm like, people feel this way about this book. I wish I could feel that way about the book. Like, it's almost sadder.
Yeah.
But I do also find like, I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes I don't often read reviews, but if I really like a book and I'll read a bad review on it, I'll be like, oh, they do have a bit of a point in some places, and like it can tinge a book for me in like I get what they're saying kind of way. So I don't love that. I don't like when there is a lot of hate for a book, and especially when it's justified. So
yeah.
But all books are
I
like
agree.
that. Like, all books have their good and their bad.
Well, and there's a market out there for every type of book, and everybody is going to either like or dislike something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just, like...
And when people are so divided about a book, it's even better because it's more, like, more noise about it. Yeah. Because people are back and forth on it. And, like, if anybody listening loves Cruel Prince, please send us a message and, like...
Tell us why.
Help us, because I want to read the second one. I also just have a thing, like, when I know something bad is, or, like, embarrassing or something is going to happen, I have to stop reading for a bit, and then I just never picked that back up, so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I never did finish the first one.
Yeah. The first one, I actually kind of like how it ends, because, like, she gets back at the mall. I do like that part. That's a good trope. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I Wikipedia'd it.
Of course you did. Of course you fucking did. You're a monster. I love you, but you're a monster.
It's fine.
Anyway. So, let's get into our week. Just a heads up for everyone. We're not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy.
Right. So, last week, Feyre is finally reunited with her mate and her inner circle, and they go about trying to figure out how they're going to win the war against Hybern. To do that, they do a couple of things. They visit the bone carver. They visit a library. And they also visit the Hewn City, the Court of Nightmares, to see about getting Mor's father's help. In doing so, Rhys has had to, I'm going to say, like, make a deal with the devil by letting Keir into Velaris, and also by aligning with Eris, who is Lucian's brother, a.k.a. the one who Mor was supposed to marry, but then she lost her V-card. He, like, stapled a letter to her stomach or something.
With
or, like,
nails.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Was not a good scene. And so Mor is pissed.
Makes sense.
So, yeah. So we are picking up right after that meeting with chapter 27. We're going all the way to chapter 44 today. So right after the meeting, they all go back to Velaris. Feyre had asked Keir about the Ouroboros mirror. I love the name of it. Like, I love saying Ouroboros. It's so fun.
It's fair.
So it's a mirror that the bone carver wants in order to fight for them. And Keir says, you can have it. It's yours, but you got to look into it in order to take it. And nobody that's looked into it has not gone crazy. So, like, everyone who looks at it goes insane. So, Feyre sort of is, like, putting that on the back burner. She's like, that's not really a possibility right now, because in her mind, she says, we can't afford for one of us to go insane.
Yeah.
So they can't risk it right now. So Mor is obviously and understandably super pissed at Rhys for two reasons. One, he's working with Eris, who, again, almost killed her. And two, for letting Keir into her city, because she says she knows he will poison it. And, like, obviously she loves the city. It's her sanctuary. It's her, like, her reason for living, almost. Mm-hmm. So she obviously doesn't want her father, the asshole, to come in and ruin it.
Yeah. Completely fair.
Rhys said, right, it is completely fair. But at the same time, like, I also feel like she maybe, I don't want to say she should have been more understanding, because I don't think that's fair either. But I feel like she should have maybe thought, and maybe, that's not really fair either. I just, like, I understand her being upset, but I also feel like she should know that Rhys doesn't do things just for the sake of them. Like, obviously he must have been quite desperate.
Yeah.
To agree to this, and I feel like now, again, she's upset right now, so, but I just wish that maybe she would that she would realize right off the bat that he wouldn't do anything to hurt her purposefully.
Yeah. It's just, like, I think in the first book that we met Keir, so ACOWAR, I think Rhys said that he would kill him at any time as soon as Moore said.
Yes.
It's like, why didn't we just do that?
Yeah.
Why is he still alive? Like, he's garbage. He's trash.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah. I agree with you. Like, why are they bargaining over using his army? They should have just killed him and absorbed his army anyway.
Yeah. I guess, like,
now,
you can't...
I don't think they should have, like, killed him, like, made it obvious that he was murdered. I think he should have had an unfortunate accident.
Yes. Yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah. But it's just, like, I don't know. It just feels like there's more that he could have done.
Yeah.
But... that's the point, I guess.
Yes, I guess. So, Rhys tells Moore that he did take precautions. He had a meeting earlier with the palace chancellors, so, like, the people in charge of all the merchants in the city, and apparently not one business is going to serve the court, anybody from the Court of Nightmares at any establishment as long as they're here. Like, apparently they're not even going to find a place to stay.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but, like, I'd like to know, how are all the people that run these businesses, how are they supposed to know who's from the Court of Nightmares? Are they going to stick out that bad? Like...
Well, and, like, just because Keir is a terrible person doesn't mean that everybody from the Court of Nightmares is a terrible person. Like, why are we... You don't have a choice where you're born. Where that gets into a whole other... thing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, technically Moore is from the Court of Nightmares. She's not terrible.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Anyway, Moore's still pissed. She's still really mad. And she's more so mad at this point that he kept it from her. And this I will agree with.
Yeah.
Like, I agree that, you know, you do hard things in time of war. You make hard decisions. You can't make everybody happy. And sometimes you do have to make deals that you're not okay with for the sake of a war. Mm. But that does not mean that he couldn't have broached the subject earlier.
Yeah.
And said, hey, Moore, we're making this deal with Keir. I have a feeling I know what he's going to want. But here's what I'm doing to make sure that while I might say yes, here are all the things I'm doing to make sure he doesn't poison our city.
But it's also like the fact that he didn't tell them meant that they were shocked when it happened. And then it was awkward because it's like it gave Keir the reaction he wanted. And maybe like if Rhys was like, I needed you to react honestly, so Keir thought that he was getting something. Like if he came out and said that, I'd even be more okay with it. But I was like, it's so weird. Just weird.
Yeah. So Moore brings up Amarantha at this point, and she asks him if Amarantha was still alive. And Moore went to him and told him that she was working with Amarantha because she offered them the best chance of survival, and it's for the greater good. Would he be okay with it? And he says, if she showed up at our door and offered a chance that they would win and everyone would survive, he would absolutely forgive her for the 50 years of torture and rape and say yes. So Amren wasn't in the room at the meeting, but she was at the palace, so I feel like she got the gist of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
She tells Rhys that he did the right thing because they do need allies, but he should have told them, but more specifically, he should have told more. Yeah. Even if he didn't want to tell everybody so that there was still some shock, he should have told more because she is the most affected.
Yeah.
Feyre then adds on, like, that she understands that obviously Mor is upset and felt a bit betrayed, but she says, like, I can't imagine we can win if we're gonna break apart from within, if we're gonna start fighting from within. Which, I mean, is true, and I feel like they all know it. But, like, family is allowed to fight.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but also, you've never been in war.
Yeah. So, they move on, and they ask Amren how she escaped the prison, because they're making the mental note. They need to figure it out so that they can potentially break the bone carver out.
Yeah.
She's really unhappy. She's really upset that they're asking her that question, and she doesn't want to tell them, but she does anyway. And she explains that she bound herself to the Fae body, making herself immortal. So, apparently, she says that what she was before this was, like, true immortality. Like, technically, a Fae, they're not immortal. They just have unnaturally long lifespans, like, that span thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Amren, I feel like 1,000 years is a blip on her scale.
Yeah.
As in her true form. So, she said that she had to give that up and essentially become a mortal Fae.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, according to them, Faes are immortal, but not for her.
Yeah.
So, she is a mortal person now. And she also had to gain, she didn't have to, but she did. She got this huge spectrum of emotions. So she said in her other form, she was like a perfect being. But she lacked remorse, guilt, pain, and desire.
Mm-hmm. And
she knew that putting herself in a Fae body, she would end up taking on all those emotions. And they said, well, they sort of asked her, like, what would happen if you were returned to that form? And she essentially said that she would forget all of her feelings towards the inner circle. She would forget that they were her friends. And she would forget all of those emotions and just destroy everyone and everything.
Fair.
It's at this moment that Elain comes downstairs, and she's speaking in riddles, and no one really understands what she's saying. Were you confused by Elain's affliction?
Like, was I like, why is nobody listening to her crazy words and thinking maybe this is something? Is that what you mean? Or
well, I more think, like, did you know what her issues were when she was spouting her nonsense? Were you like, it's so obvious?
I wasn't like, it's so obvious, but I was annoyed that they just dismissed it immediately and were like, oh, she's just going crazy, I guess. I'm like, clearly it's probably something else. Like, I found it dumb that they didn't even think it could be anything else.
Yeah. I was really annoyed because I thought it was obvious, like, when she's spouting riddles, like, come on.
Yeah.
Who do we know that speaks in riddles?
Yeah.
Like, obviously they're, like, I don't know if I should say it or not, but, like...
They find it out now, don't they?
Not now. I think they find it, yeah, no, they find it out in a little bit.
It's still this week, though, I think.
Yes. So... yeah, I get annoyed whenever they're like, oh, Elaine's gone crazy. And I'm like, she's not crazy. Like, yeah, it's just so obvious.
Listen to the words coming out of her mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, she says that, it was angry that something was taken, so it took something as a punishment. And she also mentions a girl crying that they thought was dead and a feather that melts the snow. Like, so she's really speaking in riddles, and everyone's like, what the hell is wrong with Elain?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they just, like, shoo her on her way again. They exclude her at every opportunity.
Yeah.
So, after that, Feyre and Nesta chat about Nesta's sort of job in the Hewn City. She was supposed to go into, like, this room full of treasure and identify some certain objects, but apparently she couldn't do it. Lucian pops by and suggests that they bring Elain to a healer to make sure that she doesn't have a brain injury, because they haven't done that. They haven't had a healer come and look at her at all.
Just how?
I don't know.
Fair.
Like, you would think that the first thing you would do when somebody has undergone a huge physical transformation is you would get them checked out by a doctor and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything is fine. Anyway, so they're like, oh, that's a good idea, Lucian. We'll call for our healer tomorrow. I just want to, like, be like, oh my god.
How did we not realize this before?
Yeah. So that night, Rhys comes to bed with Feyre, and he is apparently not okay. He
made a mistake.
Yes, like he did something dickish.
Yeah, he shouldn't be okay. If he was okay, then he'd be the villain I wish he was.
So he tells Feyre that seeing more upset like that is why he would rather take everything on himself. Because last week she asks him, like, why do you do this? Why do you take on all the responsibility for everything all by yourself? Like, you have this circle of friends and family that love you and want to help. Mm-hmm. And he's like, this exact reason is why I do everything by myself. Because he hates hurting his family.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I almost feel like, though, him taking it on by himself is what caused her to be upset. If he had opened up and shared, she wouldn't have been as angry as with what happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, he also adds that he lied to everyone. And that if Amarantha really did come knocking at his door, he would just murder her.
Of course.
Yeah.
Like, she killed Feyre. She killed his mate.
And raped him, like, probably thousands of times.
Yes. Right? Like, obviously... And
yeah.
But the fact that he was like, I lied. I'm like, that is shitty. That's a shitty move. Be like, yep, and I'd thank her. Like, that is so gross to say. You're gross.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, like, I feel like he's trying to imply that maybe his trauma is worse than Moore's. Because, like, it's okay for him to kill Amarantha and, like, not do any dealings with Amarantha, but Moore has to be okay with Eris.
Yeah. Yeah. He's only saying it to Feyre, but yeah, it's a bit that's not okay to say or think.
That's just what I get from it. I don't know if that's actually true.
Yeah. I didn't really see it, but now that you say it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's not ideal.
Yeah.
Gross.
Anyway, obviously, Feyre is totally okay with him. Not okay with him. Like, I don't think she's 100% okay with what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, she's like, you're not a terrible person.
She understands why he did it.
Yeah, like, you're valid. Your feelings are valid. I love you the most. Blah, blah, blah.
You made a mistake, but I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially since she literally just asked him what to do if, like, how do you balance your friends and your family? Like, them being your family and you also being the ruler. And he was like, it's hard. And she's like, well, you just fucked up.
Yeah. So the next morning, she trains with Cass, physical, like, fight training, and she said she wants to train really hard to let out her frustrations. So she trains with him, then she goes and trains with Azriel on flying, and then, after all that training, she goes to speak with Mor. Mor has gotten acceptance letters for the meeting that they want to have with all the High Lords. So they've heard from the High Lord of Dawn, the High Lord of Day, and the High Lord of Winter. They've all said yes to the meeting, with various degrees of trust. So, like, one of them is like, yep, tell me the time and place and I'll be there. Another one is like, yeah, I'll come, but I gotta bring, like, a legion of soldiers. And then another guy is like, I may come, but it has to be a secure meeting place. So, like, they've heard from those three. So there's 2 to 3 more to hear from.
Yeah.
They haven't heard from summer, autumn, or spring. I don't think they'll expect to hear from spring.
Yeah. They probably don't want spring to go, to be honest.
Yeah. So after they're, like, chatting about that for a minute, Feyre reassures Mor that, like, she's allowed to be upset and betrayed by what Rhys did. But Mor actually says, like, I understand why he did that. And she said, like, given the circumstances, I probably would have done the same thing. And then she even adds in, like, they win if I let them suck out my joy of living. It means they win. And, like, it's something that all people coming from trauma have to realize, that if you don't live your life, then you are letting the bad guys win.
Yeah.
So, very healthy of her.
Yes. Yeah. I think her biggest issue was just that he didn't talk to her beforehand. And that's 100% was a mistake. And he realizes it was a mistake. But it's just so shitty. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think she can suck up working with Eris, and Eris more so, I think, than Keir.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's been working with Keir for years.
Yes.
She's been a liaison between him and Rhys for years.
And I think, like, that's because last week Rhys was a bit shitty and said, like, she should be used to it by now. Which is also not okay to say.
No.
But I think we talked about that last week. But yeah, I think it was just a lot for her all at once. And then to know that, like, Az knew all about it. It's like, it's just so shitty. Yeah. It's just shitty.
So, you know, they have their little heart to heart, and then all of a sudden the healer shows up. Maja. So Maja is cool. She does seem cool. She's actually the one that healed Cassian when he had his wings all shredded. I don't think we've really encountered her before.
No, but she comes back.
She comes back quite often. But as of now, this is our first, like, real encounter with her. But she's Rhys's preferred healer. So they take her up to check on Elain, and Elain is okay with her checking her out. And Maja says that, like, she finds nothing wrong. There's no brain injury, there's no craziness. Like, she doesn't see anything wrong with her. But she also says that because Elain is cauldron made, it makes her different. She's not quite normal Fae, so magic can't really see everything.
Yeah.
And honestly, she just thinks that she suffered a trauma and is just taking a bit, like, she's just suffered a trauma and she needs to deal with it.
Yeah.
But she also said that, like, if you really want to know if there's something going on, get Lucien to check her out.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what? Why? He's not a doctor. And Madja's like, the mating bond is a bridge between two souls. So that means that Lucien should be able to sense if something is wrong in her head or her soul.
Yeah.
All he has to do is, like, use the bond to take it, to see.
Yeah. It kind of, like, all of this with them being like, she's crazy. Mm. It's like, oh, mental health care is also terrible in the Fae world. Yes. Good to know. They're also really bad at it.
Yeah, I love it.
My God.
Anyway, so Nesta's initially like, no way, but then it's like, we need to see. Like, we need him to check. So Nesta agrees. She's going to have a lesson with Amren, and Feyre is going to, like, chaperone. And again, like, I don't really understand why she needs to chaperone. Like, while I don't like Lucien, he's not some asshole who's just going to, like, paw at her or do anything inappropriate to her if there's no one present.
No, I think...
And they can't winnow out.
Yeah. But I think that's, like, the biggest fear, is that he'll try to steal her away in the night.
But again, they can't winnow out.
Yeah, it doesn't make
so, like, sense. Where is he going to go?
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think it's silly that she needs a chaperone. So, Feyre sits and has tea, and Lucien sits with Elain and pours them each a cup of tea, and he slowly tugs on the bond, which weirds Elain out a little bit, and it sort of brings her back into focus, because normally she's sort of, I don't know how to explain it, she's like vacant. She's like in space, we'll say, right?
Yeah.
But then he pulls on her bond and she snaps into focus for a second. And then she retreats again. And she says, twin ravens are coming, one white and one black.
What could that mean?
I don't know. But, like, her reacting to him tugging on their bond makes Feyre be like, no, we're done. And again, I'm just like, what is he going to do to her? He doesn't have the abilities that Feyre has. Like, they're just being so freaking protective over Elain. Elain needs to man the fuck up.
Well, woman, like, the fuck up. I'm not even as mad at her, because, like, she went through a trauma. She doesn't understand what's happening in her head right now, because clearly there's too much happening, mental health wise, but also with this thing. Just them not giving her a choice, and this whole book being about choices, makes me want to, like, shoot somebody. Like, what is happening? I don't understand.
Yeah.
It kills me.
Anyway, he says that, like, he didn't get deep enough. Like, he tugged on the bond really quickly, but that obviously wasn't enough time for him to sense anything that was happening. So they'll have to try again another time. So the next morning, she is doing some flying training with Azriel, and she's thinking about all the stuff she has to do. Like, apparently the High Lords are arguing over where to meet. She's trying to research the Ouroboros mirror, but she thinks to herself that nobody so far in written history has looked into it and not gone crazy. And she's also really struggling with the flying. Apparently she keeps, like, hitting trees, and she tries to steer with her arms instead of steering with the muscles in her wings.
Which is like,
yes.
Woo!
Yeah.
Like I'm Superman.
We're doing the motions with our arms. It's really funny. And so, like, Azriel says that, like, she's afraid to take the leap and get a really good start. And I can see this because, just as a, like, example, when I was a kid, I used to run and cartwheel all the time. I would do a little run, I would do a little hop, and then I would cartwheel, right?
Yeah.
If I tried to do that now, I don't think I would be able to do it. I would hesitate at the hop. I wouldn't be able to run and just go for it.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether I'd be good at a cartwheel or not. I don't have the same fearlessness as I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is sort of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have the same fear. Like, she doesn't, when you're a child and you're learning stuff, you don't have the same fear as that you do as an adult.
Yeah.
So she even asks, as, like, they're on a little cliff, she's like, can you push me? He says, no.
Which I 100% would say the same thing. Like, I can't do heights. Like, I can do heights well. I can't jump from heights well. Like, I did a small jump off of a thing at a zip lining place recently, and I was on the side, and he was like, okay, now you let go. And I was like, I can't. And he was like, well, just let go of this and hold on to this. And then he pushed me. Because I was not going up by myself.
Yeah. Now, I probably would have a different reaction than Az. I would probably push her the first couple of times until she got used to it.
Yeah.
Like, but I understand him being like, no, I won't push you.
Yeah.
She's getting a bit deflated, though, because she's not progressing fast enough. Like, her whole goal with learning to fly was being able to fly with a legion, maybe, and fight if she needs to in the air with a legion of Illyrians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously I see that as extremely problematic, if only due to the fact that they wouldn't accept a woman in their ranks. But on top of that, you know, she's just getting dejected because she's not doing well enough. Like, not only does she have to learn how to fly, but if she wanted to fight with a legion, she would have to learn all the maneuvers. She would have to learn how to, like, do all of these, like moves in the air that she can only do on the ground. Like, it's just a big ask.
Yeah. And I think she thought that she would be better at it. And, like, she is the type of person that it seems like skills that she needs to have, she's been pretty good at picking them up. Yeah. Like, she, like, obviously has had her struggles and shit, but, like, she learned how to hunt and she figured it out because she had to. So I think, like, that's kind of making this harder too, which I completely get. Like, I'd obviously still want to try, but, like, if I'm not good at something immediately, I'm like, well, this isn't for me.
Yeah. Anyway, so her and Az, like, he's like, well, you're probably not gonna be ready. You're probably not gonna be able to fly in a legion and fight. However, he's like, I want to tell you a little story about Miriam and Drakon. So we've heard a bit about them already. Miriam was Jurian's lover, and she was a half-human, half-fae slave. And her master, the queen, got a prince as a gift, I'll say. Like, he was betrothed to her as a birthday present. And when he realized how awful he realized how awful the queen was, he was like, heck no, I'm out of here. And I think he helped Miriam and a bunch of slaves escape.
Yeah, I think Miriam was gifted to him.
Yes.
They were betrothed, but then the queen gifted him another person who obviously they saw as lesser. But like, it was such a weird escape, right? Yeah, I think so. It was just such a weird dynamic. Can you imagine, like, your fiance giving you a person and being like, this is yours to use as you please?
I just, like, I wouldn't want to give, so, like, say if my husband and I had just gotten engaged, I wouldn't want to give him, like, a pretty girl.
Well, that's what I mean. It's just like, so weird.
If I had to give him a person,
it would be a guy.
Yeah, you would give them not somebody that they would find appealing. Yeah. Give them, like, a gnarly old man.
Yeah. Gnarly.
So, they eventually reunited during the war. They fell in love. And they were fighting for human rights, essentially. Like, to make humans not slaves anymore. So, that's backstory on them. Asriel tells a story of them leading 50,000 humans to safety during the war through a desert to the sea where Drakon had ships docked. And the Dark Queen, his former fiancé, apparently had the ships destroyed. And her army was chasing them from behind, these 50,000 people. Drakon's people, his Fae people, they are seraphim. So they are also winged the same way that Illyrians are, but seraphim have like eagle wings, we'll say. They have like wings like birds that are gigantic instead of like bat wings. So what they do is they decide to part the sea with magic for the humans to run across it since all the boats were destroyed. Miriam, being the ruler and leader that she was, decided to stay behind to make sure that every human was not, like, there was no human left behind. But the army was getting closer, so the seraphim, like, landed and they were battling them. And in the battle, Miriam was stabbed by the queen. The magic of the seraphim, like the ones that were keeping the ocean apart, which I assume would cause it need a great deal of magic.
Yeah.
It was running out. They were running out of magic. They were being depleted because they were battling and holding the ocean apart. So they decided, as sort of a Hail Mary, we'll say, they decide to close the sea so that the army would drown and not reach the humans that were still running. So Drakon thought Miriam was safe, but she wasn't. A seraphim cartographer named Nefel saw Miriam stabbed and decided to go after her, and it was her lover, who was in Drakon's army, like a general, noticed that Nefel and Miriam were both missing. Even more backstory. I feel like this is like a flashback. Nefel had wanted to be a soldier, but apparently she was too small, and her wings were really little. Like, they were smaller than average. And one was a little bit deformed, and she was really weak, so she couldn't carry a seraphim shield, so she couldn't be in the army. That's why she became a cartographer, and she was like, if I can't be in the army, I'll be the best cartographer you've ever seen. She'd also become besties with Miriam during the campaign that they were doing, so she went back for her friend and refused to leave her side. Because she could fly, she just couldn't fly well enough to be in, like, a super aerial legion.
Yeah.
And even though Miriam was like, go, save yourself, Nefel refused, and instead she picked her up and flew with Miriam in her arms, even though she was too weak to carry a shield. She managed to carry a person. And she managed to fly even though her wings were small and disfigured. She flew far and she flew fast, and she actually managed to get through like little rocky openings that regular seraphim wouldn't be able to get through because their wings were so large. So she flew and she managed to save herself and Miriam. So Rhys, Cass, and Azriel have adopted what they call the Nefel philosophy. It's a reminder to them that their greatest weakness can be their greatest strength and come from the most unlikely places. And he sort of says, like, in other words, Feyre might not be able to fight in the aerial legions with the Illyrians, but knowing she can fly is still going to make a difference.
Yeah. Do you think that these Seraph people are possibly related to a different book series?
Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, maybe.
Yes. Interesting.
Yes, interesting.
Is Drakon the daddy? We don't know who he is.
Very well could be.
Interesting.
Yes. So that night she gets home and she's so sore she can barely stand. So like Rhys puts her in the tub and he takes care of her, and then he goes and gets a whole bunch of lotions and balms and rubs them into her wings and her body. Here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, so like obviously she has to expend a certain amount of magic in order to create the wings, right?
Yes.
Do we think that she is constantly, like, I guess I'm wondering if she has to continuously work
to keep the wings there
present, or is it just a dash of magic to get them out and formed, and then no more magic, and then another dash to make them go away?
I would think that one.
Because in all fairness, that's what I think of the most when she's like learning how to fly and like doing all this stuff with the wings. I'm thinking in the back of my head, doesn't she have to consciously think about having the wings out all the time in order to keep them there?
I don't think so, but that'd be very interesting because, like, in this book, I think they have sex in the sky. And if you're thinking about something else, are they just gonna disappear? No, I think that's in the novella. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I think that it's just the one bout of magic, because, like, I kind of think of Tamlin as a werewolf that is not controlled by the moon and can change at will.
Okay.
So, like, he has two forms, and he goes between them, and he decides when he wants to. Like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, like, it's almost like in the book Bitten, like, it's hard to turn into a wolf. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing that but once you're a wolf, you just are, and then you have to, like, it's hard to turn yourself back. So I kind of feel like, because she says that the gift to get the wings is shape-shifting, and she knows she got it from Tamlin, which doesn't really make sense to me, because I think she's also said that all of the High Lords have a different shape. Yeah. But I don't think we get their shapes, so I don't really understand, but that's like a completely separate conversation. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that for Tamlin specifically, it's his two shapes. But I guess it's the same question for Rhys, because his wings are hidden all the time. So does he have to think about hiding his wings, or does he just mask them with a spell, and then they're gone? Yeah. Don't know.
That's what I mean. These are the questions we need answered.
Maybe in the next book.
If anybody has any ideas, let us know.
Yeah, because we're not getting anywhere. We're talking ourselves into circles.
Anyway, so we're approaching a hot time right now because Rhys is like rubbing her down with all these like balms to make her feel better. Yeah. I mean, you're laughing, but he actually is like just rubbing her whole body full of... Yes. So, like, she's on her belly, and he ends up, like... he fingers her, and then he licks her out, and he's playing with, like, sensitive spots on her wings, and she comes, and then she immediately falls asleep. Totally, like, I'm saying leaving him hanging, not saying that it can't happen.
No, because I think she's even like, okay, now you. And then he's like, you are exhausted. Just close your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, next morning, she's still, like, way too sore. So she cancels her training. And instead, her and Nesta go to the library under the House of Wind. They don't have a ton of moments, like...
Of the two of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one of them, and Nesta actually, like, I'm not going to say she extends a branch, because I don't feel like it is, like, she shows kindness here where she doesn't normally. Mm-hmm. She admits as they're looking through the books, that she was not aware that Feyre couldn't read. I guess she thought that she could, and thought that she was in the same place with her studies as the sisters had been. So she wasn't aware of where she had been and where she actually was in her lessons when they became poor. And she actually asked Feyre, like, why didn't you ask for help? And I'm just like, Nesta, you're a dummy. Like, you were openly hostile all the time.
Yeah. And, like, it's just, yeah. I get what she's saying, but it's also, like, you're a bit of a bitch. And you would look down on it. So, like, yeah, it's a bit, like, of course she's not going to tell you any weakness you jump on.
Yeah. Well, Feyre then admits that she just assumed that Nesta and Elain would both say no. I don't understand why Elain would say no.
Yeah, I don't either. But she also assumed that they knew she couldn't read.
Yes.
Because she even mentions it in the, like, first book that, like, everyone knew she couldn't read. Because it's such a thing of shame for her in the first book, yes. And it's obviously huge. But she really thought that everyone knew and just didn't care. Which is sad. Because it's apparently not even true.
Yeah.
So I think this is also, like, an author choice to make us be like, oh, Nesta isn't as evil as, like, Feyre thought. Some of that shit is in Feyre's head. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So after sort of Feyre says, like, I just assumed you would have both said no, she then asks, like, why do you push everybody away except for Elain? And this is a question I would love to hear answered.
Yeah,
however,
right?
Right? But we
don't timing.
Yes, we don't get to hear the answer because they feel a tremor in the library, and then all of a sudden, darkness descends on them. And Feyre is just like, we should probably run.
It's true.
So they just start running from nothing. They don't know what they're running from. They're just going. But Nesta is slow in her dress and her lack of training. And I almost wish Feyre had said, I told you so!
Yeah.
Like, this is why you should train!
Yeah.
All of a sudden, two Fae males appear in front of them. One has light hair and one has dark. But they both have Hybern coat of arms, like, on them. And they just, like, they don't say anything. They just blow Faebane in their faces, which kills their magic. Can you imagine just having a guy show up in front of your face and just going, and it's like blowing something in your face? It's like, what is that?
Yeah, wild.
So the men then, because obviously they're villains, so they have to talk excessively and give their whole backstory.
Jesus.
So they admit that they are the king's ravens. And Hybern helped them. He used a spell to get past the wards. They both disguise themselves as, like, old monks in order to gain entrance from the priestesses. And apparently they were there for Nesta because she took too much from the cauldron and the king wants it back.
Which is, like, this is some good information. We needed this.
But, like, that's what the villains always do. They always spill their guts and give too much information. Yeah, every single time. And then, so I guess they realize that that's why they haven't used the cauldron to take down the wall yet. They can't. So Feyre realizes she has three options. She could try and fight the men hand to hand. She only has a little dagger, and they each have, like, 2 full swords. So she's like, shit. They're probably trained in, like, hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
She can try and run up to the upper levels and scare the priestesses that are already traumatized. Or she could run down the corkscrew, because remember we said the library was like a corkscrew with a big hole in the middle? And she said, I could run down towards the creepy thing in the basement.
that, like, scared the shit out of Cassian to the point that he, like...
goes pale whenever
won't even think... Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. And, of course, we all know what she's going to decide.
Mm-hmm.
So they go down. And they just run. Down, down, down. It's dark. They have to, like, feel their way, but they just keep running. So the ravens run after them, obviously. I don't understand how they don't catch them. But I digress. But they tease them, asking if they know what happened to the human queens. Again, giving them vital information.
Yeah.
So, apparently, we talked about this, week 1 or week 2? A little bit?
Yes. Yeah, one of them.
We
previously spoken about.
Yes. So, we're finally figuring out what actually happened. Mm-hmm. So, apparently, the youngest queen went in first. And I guess, so Elain went first, then Nesta went in, and then this youngest human queen. And because Nesta had taken something from the cauldron, it decided to punish the queen and take something from her. Her youth, the thing she prized the most. Yeah. And she came out a withered crone.
But immortal.
Yeah. So, and she's furious at Nesta. Obviously.
Yeah.
And the rest of the queens refuse to go in the cauldron, which I think is smart. Fix it first. Then get him. So, Feyre remembers some things Elain has said. And realized that she sensed that all of this was going to happen. Like, apparently she saw the young hand but old. She mentioned earlier the 2 ravens, one black and one white. So it's finally all coming together that maybe Elain ain't crazy. Maybe she's something else.
Which is just so funny that this is the time you're like, Feyre, maybe you should be worried about dying.
Yeah. No.
But
I don't really understand how this happens, but they reach an area where I don't know if there's like a little passageway or something, with a little light, so it leads back up to the upper levels. So Feyre tells Nesta to run up that way and run towards the light. So Nesta does, and Feyre then tips a whole bunch of shelves over to block that way, so that the ravens can't follow. So obviously, Feyre also can't follow, so she's trapped down the corkscrew with the 2 ravens. So she keeps running down, 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 feeling her way where it's too dark. And I guess the ravens are having a similar issue because they're not catching up to her. And she's just thinking, asking for help.
Yeah. She's
like, help me, help me, help me. And then she hears a voice that returns her question. It says, you need help. And he says, and the voice asks for a favor. And she's like, is it gonna be to hurt people, or like, what kind of a bargain? Yeah, what do you want, essentially? And the voice just says it wants company. It wants someone to tell it of life. And Feyre says, okay, done.
Perfect. I love this.
Yeah. And she feels a tingle along her arm. It's another tattoo. And, like, I gotta love that the voice was not more specific. Like, you would think a 1,000-year-old being, whatever it is, would be smarter about how it forms a bargain.
Yeah. Especially since it lives in the basement of a library. Like, you'd kind of assume it can read and has read everything.
Yeah.
Like, what else is it gonna do? I guess he's just lonely. Just a lonely guy.
So the voice asks, after she gets the tattoo, the voice is like, should I kill them now? And she's like, okay, sure.
Yes, please.
She just says, yeah. And it says, okay, close your eyes. And then she hears the ripping and the tearing and the screaming. Which is amazing. I like how it's just like, shall I kill them now? It's very polite.
Yeah, I like him.
I do too. So all of a sudden, Rhys and Cash show up, and they, like, take her, and they fly her out the center. They're pissed. And they're really worried about the fact that the king got past their defenses, but they also know that, so I guess they know that the King of Hybern used a one-time use spell. So they're not afraid that he can break in again. But at the same time, now they know what the king wants and why he hasn't acted yet.
Yeah. Why he hasn't blown the wall to shreds.
Yes, because they need Nesta. So they have a meeting with everyone discussing the attack, and how they need to, like, keep it a secret that the attack happened. They don't want people to know because, especially after Valaris, they don't want people to think, and especially their allies, they don't want them to think they're unprepared and that they're weak.
Yeah.
And this break-in would sort of look that way. Elain says something, and it makes Az finally realize that Elain is not crazy. She's a seer. And I'm just, like, thinking in my head, finally. Like, how did you guys not see this before?
It was dumb. Yeah.
She talks of the sixth queen, the mortal queen, as a potential ally. And that, this is another thing that gets me, is that, so, she mentions something about the sixth queen and sees her as a potential ally, and then they're asking her questions, like, do you know where she is? Do you know what she's doing? And blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And, like, Elain can just figure it out without any training. She's like, oh, yeah, look, I can totally see.
Yeah. And you're like, how did Elain realize what was happening and then just not tell anyone?
That's what I mean. Like, anyways.
Probably yeah. She was like, no one's going to listen to me anyway, so I'm just going to spout off weird shit until somebody actually asks me about it.
Yeah. So she says that she can tell that the sixth queen is held captive by a sorcerer lord and is a firebird. I'm thinking phoenix?
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a firebird.
Yeah. They never call it a phoenix. They just call it a firebird all the time. So she's a firebird by day and a human by night. The other queens actually sold her to this guy, and her name is Vasa. They call her Vasa.
You're like, why is there so many trading of people? Also, she's a queen. She's one of the 6 queens, and they're just like, we can sell her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can own a queen.
And I didn't even think they were all queens of the same realm. Like, they're not queens together. We're not talking like a Narnia situation where they're all kings and queens of one place. They're separate.
I didn't read Narnia.
Oh.
But yeah, I agree. They, like, each have, like, a region or
territory
or something.
They all have their own country.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't understand how they could make the decision to sell her to somebody when she's autonomous. She should have her own, like, guard that keep her safe, but she doesn't.
Yeah, it's very odd.
So Elain sees her on a deep lake, and they want to find her to see if she'll ally with them. I don't really get that either, because they're like, oh, she must have an army. She has a region or a territory. She's a queen, so she must have an army. And I'm like, what makes you think she still has shit?
Yeah, she's owned by somebody. How is
her country still intact, not being ruled by one of the other queens?
Like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it does not. I call bullshit. So Lucian offers to go find her. He finally tells us that his eye can see past spells and glamours. So we wanted to know what the eye did. That's what the eye does.
I'm sure it does more. I'm sure there's more to it.
Yeah. So he decides, like, there's no time to waste. I'm going to leave tomorrow. So Feyre then takes Rhys to their room to take care of him. He's, like, dejected, and he's not feeling good. He feels really guilty. Like, he feels like he can't take care of the most vulnerable people in his kingdom. He feels guilty that the priestesses don't feel safe.
Yeah, and that is devastating. That is so sad.
Yeah, like, he worked really hard to build this, like, safe haven for them.
Safe place, yeah.
And now that has been violated, so he feels like a lot of them won't feel safe anymore. Even though it's not his fault. But...
No. But, like, I guess if you're the ruler of a place, everything is your fault.
Yeah. So the next morning, Lucien leaves, and it's like, relatively painless. Like, he just leaves. He doesn't really say goodbye to Elain. She doesn't really say goodbye to him either. But
she does come out and see him, though.
Yes.
She watches him leave, which is more than I expected.
Yeah. But, like, he sort of stares at her for a minute, and she's about to, like, take a step towards him when he, like, turns away. So I feel like she has this, like, pull towards him that she doesn't want. Yeah.
I just want to know more.
Listen. Issue. My thing is, if she plans to reject him, I just want her to reject him.
Yes, it's very rude.
She pulls him along for quite a while, which does nothing but give him hope.
Yeah.
So Rhys winnows Lucien to the border of the human continent. That's as far as he can take him, and then Lucien has to go on foot. And then he comes back, and him and Feyre are sort of having, like, a nice moment together when Amren all of a sudden, like, bursts into the house and tells them that Hybern has laid siege to the city of Adriata, which is the summer court. So there's a battle happening.
Yeah. So we get a tiny bit more information. Varian apparently sent Amren a warning to prepare their defenses because, as Amren says, they're friends. Yes. Interesting. She says it isn't a call for aid, but Feyre is insistent that they go. So Rhys, Cass, and Az go to get the Illyrian forces ready. And, like, Rhys needs to basically winnow them all to the summer court, which is insane.
He takes all the Illyrians, right?
Yeah.
It's wild how many he...
Yeah. They're like, take all these people and then fight. Feyre and Moore kind of, like, wait to hear from him to know that, like, they're there so that they will go over to fight as well once they know that Rhys and the Illyrians and Cass and Az are all there. Rhys is leaving Amren and a small group of Illyrians to protect the city. So, makes sense. We need somebody there in case Hybern attacks them. Rhys also sends Feyre the sign that she's going, and Nesta is there, and she's kind of shocked that Feyre is going to go fight in a war. Like, she's literally going to a battle, and Nesta is like, why would you do that? And Feyre's like, because they need help, obviously.
Yes.
Like, that is her main character trait. It's like... Yeah. So yeah, Moore winnows them to the summer court, and it's just, like, ultimate chaos there. There's fighting on the ground, there's boats from both sides, there's Illyrians in the air. Like, it's really not what Feyre expected. She really expected, like, lines of people, like, quintessential, I think of Lord of the Rings at the beginning or Gallivant at that one song. Anyway, it's chaos, and it's not what she thought it would be. She says the water in the bay is running red, and there's smoke everywhere. And no one else has come to assist the summer court, but she also notices that, like, no one from the spring court is there to help Hybern, which is also good. Which is good. The other court's not coming is not good.
No.
they get their orders from, I guess, Rhys. Soldiers have breached the palace, so they winnow into the middle levels of the palace, and the upper floor is full of high fae, and the lower floors are the lower faes, and the upper floors, the high faes, are barricading themselves in and leaving the lesser fae to be attacked by Hybern. So it's not great.
No. Which sucks, though, too, because we learned in the last book that Tarkin, the High Lord of Summer, has these ideals.
He thinks everyone is equal or should be equal.
Yeah, but
he doesn't like the lesser.
He doesn't like it. However, he's not doing a good job of it.
Yeah. And it kind of like, it does come up a bit later in this moment. So before they go to the palace, like we're kind of on the way, Feyre and Mor decide that they're going to keep each other in eyesight. This is the first time Feyre's ever been in a battle. It's like a big deal. And Mor's like, if you can't kill people, that's fine. Like, just watch my back. But Feyre does basically the opposite of that. She's like a beast there. She uses her powers to kill most of them, but like she puts fire down people's throats to kill them, and then she drowns people with water. And at one point she like makes the room dark, and her and Mor go around and just winnow and kill people. And like Feyre changes her eyes so she can see in the dark, which I think she's done before. But apparently Mor can just see in the dark and just was born with that ability.
I don't know
anything about Mor. More.
We know nothing about more.
Right? I just don't understand.
Yeah. No, me neither. I'm so confused. Like, especially since, like, everyone's like, ooh, Mor. She's like, everyone thinks she's not equally scary to Amren, but, like, everyone's like, oh my god, Mor.
Yeah, they got into a fight once, and it, like, destroyed a place. And
yes.
You're like, what?
I want to know what's so amazing about Mor. Not that I don't think she's cool. I do. But, like, I just don't understand, like, what makes her so,
yeah, we know nothing about her powers. You'd think Feyre would be more interested. Like, why did she never asked?
Yes!
They're friends.
Yes.
They're close. Anyway. Yeah, they, like, So they clear the palace. They clear the whole palace, and then they're out in the streets, and Feyre kind of like checks on Rhys through the bond, but he has like a iron tight metal shield, but then like she knocks on it and he lets her in, and then she's just stuck in his head, and I'm like, this is terrible. What if someone comes and kills you? She's just like stuck in his head.
I know. So, like, is she just, like, standing there completely out of it, like, having a vision sort of a thing? And, like, is there a battle happening? Like,
it seems like a terrible plan, awesome. But I guess we need to know that this scene happened. It's just...
yeah. Like, I get it, but...
The book is in her point of view, so I know. Anyway. So, basically, she can see through Rhys's eyes, and... he has decided to check out why there's a damper on his power. So we're assuming it's Faebane, something like that. Something's happening. So he lands on a Hybern boat, and he's exhausted. He literally just winnowed all these Illyrian soldiers here, and he's been fighting. He's not in peak condition for magic. So Hybern steps towards him, like the king of Hybern, which I know I synonymously call him Hybern, even though the place is Hybern.
But I feel like that's his name, though.
We don't get a name. I don't think we ever get his name.
No. But, like, they call him Hybern.
Anyway, so I'm doing both. So he steps towards Rhys and he smiles. And Feyre can kind of hear some of Rhys's thoughts, or he's telling her this, I guess, but he knew that this was going to be a trap going in. And Feyre's like, what the fuck, man? Like, why did you go into a trap? But, of course, he prefers to sacrifice himself than ask for help. He also kind of says he wants to take the king alive. He doesn't want to just kill him because that will make him seem like he is just a tyrant. Because, like, Hybern's people see him as a liberator. They don't think he's a bad guy. So it's just, it would be bad, especially since Rhys doesn't have the support of all of the High Lords. If he just killed him, it's not the greatest move, I guess. But obviously, Feyre's just like, kill him. And we're like, he's a bad guy. Just kill him. But there's so much book left, so obviously he can't. He also says they don't know where the cauldron is, so they can't really just kill him without getting the cauldron, which I guess, but you could find it later. I'm not overly worried about that. The king obviously hasn't fought at all and looks completely pristine, like he's ready to go, so Rhys is kind of worried that he can't handle him. Of course, they banter back and forth, and Rhys lunges for the king's mind, but he gets nothing. So clearly there's like something happening. And then the king kind of brings up Amarantha and how she used him. And like everybody loves bringing that up, and I would be so annoyed if I was him. Like,
yes.
Everyone loves just rubbing his face in his trauma, and it's awful. But then he also talks about Feyre and how she's responsible ultimately for Amarantha dying, for the Adder dying, and for his niece and nephew Dagden and Branna's deaths. And like the king is getting super pissed about that because obviously he was close with his niece and nephew.
Yeah, they were just as sick and sadistic as he was.
He does say though that he's happy that Feyre kind of paved the way for him to have more troops in spring, which kind of like Feyre kind of like feels a bit bad about that, which is fair. Like spring is a gateway to the summer court, so it makes sense. Hybern then asks Rhys where or who her gifts came from, and he has like a knowing glint in his eye, whatever that really means. But we kind of get that, like, he knows the truth.
That's true. What is a knowing glint?
It's a common thing in books, but I'm like, how do you...
I'm trying to do it right now. I don't think I'm doing
like a side eye, like an I know something you also know.
Yeah.
So, I guess something like that. The king then tells Rhys it's going to take everything he has, and he's still going to lose and die, and then Hybern is going to take Feyre, and maybe after he's done with her, he'll give her to Tamlin. And you're like, eee.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And also, you know when you talk about someone's mate, like, he's gonna be pissed.
And, like, Feyre's there listening, and she's also, like, very pissed about this.
And he knows that she's in his brain, right?
Rhys did, yes.
Yeah, so like Rhys knows that she's also watching. And it's sort of like, oh, dude, no, you didn't.
Feyre's basically like in his brain begging him to strike or to flee, just to like do something. Don't stay here. You're getting weaker. Yeah. Like, stop. And he rallies his power, and he asks the king why. And Hybern says that, like, his people suffered, and they refuse to live in harmony, and they're going to reclaim what is theirs. So, very...
Essentially, he thinks humans are, like, the dirt beneath his shoe, and they don't deserve any piece of land or continent or anything.
So...
It's wonderful. As a human, I am not insulted at all.
And, like, the human queens are allies of his, which is just, like, mind-boggling.
But, I mean, we both know that he doesn't give a shit what happens to them, and he'll probably kill them the second they stop becoming
for
useful,
sure. So Rhys ends up throwing a javelin of power at the king, and it goes right through him. He's just an illusion. Ooh. Ghosts. Which is, you know, how it's always going to be. So then obviously the king just disappears, and so does the damper on Rhys's power. So he just, like, this boat is also full of soldiers of Hybern's, so he just mists them all, because now his power is Still probably not 100% because he did do a lot of shit, but it's not dampered by Faebane anymore. Which is good.
Right.
Rhys then throws Feyre out of his mind because she was stuck in there, and Mor is just like shaking her and freaking out like he would be. It's the middle of a battle. Like I just envision
in like an alleyway. Yeah. Like it's like not the right
just,
time.
Like, you know, remember the Vampire Academy movie where Rose would just like stand there and her eyes would glaze over and you'd be like, she got hit in the face with a ball at one point, I think. Like, you know, that's what would happen. Yeah. Except for this is a fucking war.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So she wouldn't get hit with a ball. She'd probably get hit with, like, maybe a mace. Or, like, a sword.
Right? It's just bad timing. But Feyre gets back to herself, and then she starts to throw up multiple times. And Mor kind of is there comforting her, and she says, like, they all felt like this after their first battle. Yeah.
It's not really why I thought she was throwing up, though.
I know, but I guess it's both. Like, it's traumatic.
Yeah.
After the damper's gone, obviously the tide has turned a bit, and Tarquin and Rhys are in their full power, so they start to win. Whereas before they weren't. It was more even, maybe? Yeah. So we're assuming that the war is going to be over. Not the war, the battle is going to be over soon, like this battle. Mm-hmm. Feyre's kind of like I said, trauma impacted, and she doesn't really know what to do with her body now. She's just like, I feel like she kind of turned her brain off to be able to kill people and be able to go through this, and now she's kind of just like, I don't know what to do with myself. So you would think that there's going to be some repercussions mentally from this.
Yeah, for sure.
So Mor brings them to the palace to find the boys, and they go to the middle again where they were, where they helped clear the palace, and injured Fae are being winnowed here, and this is where they're seeing healers. Varian comes over to them, who is the person that warned Amren in the beginning, and also brother to Tarquin? Not brother.
Who? Oh, Varian?
Varian, yeah.
Varian is a cousin.
Cousin, yeah. So and he's also like one of like Tarquin's advisors or some shit. Like they're close.
Yeah, he's like a general in his army or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Feyre, so yeah, Varian does come over. Feyre has no power left, but Mor slides like a shield into place. Like there's still blood rubies on their heads, so they probably shouldn't be here. Varian then tells them that he is in the dining room, and Feyre thinks he's talking about Rhys, but it's obviously Tarquin he's talking about. So they go in to talk to him, and everyone else leaves, and he tells them he thought that she came to finish the job. He heard about Tamlin's court falling, and that it was her that did it, and he assumed that she was on Hybern's side, and that she and Rhys were basically coming to destroy the summer court, and that, like, obviously not at all what happened.
No.
Mor responds, they would never, but he cuts her off and says that he's talking to Feyre. No. He's really, like, it's a 180 from his...
what he was like previously.
Yeah, when they visited earlier. He asks them why. And she says, our dreams are the same. And that goes back to, I think, like you said already this week, he wants lesser Fae and high Fae, to be more even. And he doesn't see why there's a division in them. And he, like, that is his dream of a united court where there's no lesser. So she's kind of trying to say, we're still on the same page, like...
But are they, though? Like, because he hates their guts at this moment.
Exactly, and that's kind of what he says. He's like, is that how you justified stealing the book? I don't think he says the words the book, but he says, is that how you justified stealing? But Rhys shows up, And, of course, saves her from having to answer and says they had their reasons.
They did.
Yeah. They could have gone about it differently, but they didn't know how he'd respond, and then he might have guarded it more. So, like, I understand why they did what they did, but clearly he's going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Tarquin does tell her again that when she destroyed Tamlin's court, she left the door open for Hybern to get to the summer court. And she's the one that made this attack possible.
Yeah.
And she, like
used to... In fair, like, I don't know, man. I don't know how to feel about this, because I feel like there's a point to be made that, yes, she's the one that sort of caused the spring court to be so weak, but at the same time, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's hard, because yes, yes, she did, like, fuck up the spring court, but Tamlin already had a deal with Hybern, but not everybody knows that. So,
yeah,
he could have just let them all in anyway, but Rhys kind of makes the point that, like, Hybern makes his own decisions. It's not her that made this decision, which is also true, but you kind of have to think that, yes, if she didn't do what she did in the spring court, Tamlin might have been able to keep Hybern's armies out a bit longer, and maybe this might not have happened. But we don't really know that either, because in, like, a little bit they say that they say that Hybern's army, like, goes back across the sea. Like, he doesn't even go back to the spring court. So, like, why wouldn't they have just attacked that way in the beginning?
I guess my thing is that, like, what you said is true. Not everybody knows that Tamlin made the deal with Hybern before. But in addition to that, like, I don't know. Not even in addition to that. I feel like, I don't know. I don't even know if there's a solution to this, because even though she ruined his court, she doesn't want to, like, she's not going to be the one to be like, well, he made a deal to get me back, even though I told him I didn't want him. Like, I feel like she's not going to throw him under the bus like that.
Yeah.
But then, too, I feel like that's really I don't know. We don't know, as of yet, Tamlin's, like, thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And, like, realistically, his entire army could have fought with Hybern and made this much worse. But Tarquin doesn't know that. And the only reason that they probably weren't there is because she made them not trust Tamlin. Yeah. So, but, like, she shouldn't have trusted they shouldn't be trusting him anyway, because he made a deal with Hybern in the beginning. But again, nobody knows that. Yeah. So it's a tricky situation. Obviously, the revenge was exactly what I wanted to read as, like... as haters of Tamlin? Yeah, and, like, you know people who have been in abusive relationships. We've been in abusive relationships. Like, that kind of revenge is very much what you want in a book. Yeah. So, and not even just a book. Like, I wish I could get that kind of revenge. Well, yes. Anyway, back to this. Rhys tells Tarquin that they're going to stay in the mountains until the city is safe, and Tarquin is just still very mad. And Feyre just tells him to, like, tend to his wounded. And Rhys kind of starts to apologize here, and he says he didn't have a choice. He did it to try to avoid this war. But Tarquin just tells him to get out. And Rhys asks him to come to the meeting, because he's like, this is just the beginning of what Hybern's going to do. And Tarquin just says, take your mate and tell her not to tell a High Lord what to do. Yeah. So Rhys responds, Feyre is High Lady. And Tarquin's response to this kind of pisses me off, because, like, his whole dream is equality and shit, but he's like, he, like, laughs, and he says that Rhys loves to spit on tradition. And I'm like, isn't that what you, like, isn't that your goal? Are we pissed that women are equal to men now? I don't understand. Does he only want, like, the lesser Fae males to be equal to the higher Fae males? And then, like, I don't get what he wants.
Yeah. I feel like he's just too mad to, like...
Yeah.
He's too mad to think rationally about this. Rationally is not a word. Rationally. God.
Yeah. So
that's problematic.
Rationally.
Yes.
I like it. Yeah, so really, I'm sure he doesn't actually think that. I think he's just reacting because he's pissed. Or at least I hope.
Yeah.
So Feyre and Rhys go back to the Illyrian camps, where all of the injured Illyrians are up in the mountains, and Feyre kind of notes that, like, Rhys is a real leader and he knows what people need, but she doesn't know how to act around them, which I also think has something to do with the fact that they're Illyrians and they don't respect her as a woman.
No. Well, they don't. They don't respect women at all. Like, they all know that she's High Lady, right?
Yeah. But, like, they're obviously not going to respect her because they don't respect any women. So, like, it is going to be hard to be the leader of them. But I don't know if this really comes up much more. Like, obviously the sexism comes up a lot, but I don't think her struggle to be a leader of the Illyrians comes up.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't encountered it. But, like, do they just avoid it because they know what the Illyrians are like? Or do they, like, tackle it head on? Yeah.
It's not great. It's all problematic.
It is all problematic, yes.
So Feyre just ends up helping the healers as best she can to, like, help people get better.
Yeah.
Like, fetching water and shit.
Well, so, like, here's my thing, too. So, like, she has healing power from the Dawn Court.
Yeah.
Can she use that at all, or is it solely just with her blood?
Yeah. Like, would we just, like, get people to start drinking her blood?
We'll get vampires.
Yeah. That's a good question. I don't think that's what she's doing, to be honest. I think she's just getting water and bandages, but...
But at the same time, like, if her magic is expended, then she probably can't use it. Yeah. And she has been battling all day, so her reservoirs are probably...
Yeah.
Low.
Also, we don't want everybody to figure out that her blood is magical, or they'll just, like...
Good point.
Use her as a blood bag.
No, you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Feyre ends up, like, sitting down on a bucket when her legs are about to give out, and then she wakes up inside a tent with Rhys. He asks how she is, and she kind of says she doesn't know, and he understands, like, it's her first battle. Makes sense. Rhys is looking at the casualty list, and Summer has lost a lot of people, but some Illyrians still did die, but much less than Summer, obviously, because they were taken by surprise. Yeah.
I also just feel like Illyrians are probably better trained. Like, they
it seems combat. Like. Yeah. And, like, they can fly is a nice advantage. You know. Rhys is shaken that Hybern did this, and he kind of mentions that, like, he feels like a lot of this is attacking him as a person. Like, Hybern attacked Summer because of the rubies, and the library because of what it meant to him, and, like, the safety of the priestesses who felt safe there, and, like, he took comfort in the library himself. He says that, like, the king knows how to hurt them and specifically go after what they love and care about. Which is true, but I'm also like, is everything about Rhys? Is that the point of the book? Is Hybern just attacking Rhys? Because, like, I think this also
secretly has a crush on him or something.
I love it. I'm that headcanon accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I feel like maybe they feel as if it's all about Rhys because Rhys is the one most actively opposing him.
Yes.
And the most vocal about it. He's the one organizing everything. He's the one trying to get allies. Like, Hybern knows this shit.
Yeah. And he's also the most powerful one.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. I get it, but it just felt kind of like self-centered? Yeah. Like
a little bit, yeah.
Anyway, Feyre just says, like, they need to kill him before he destroys everything. But Rhys is kind of starting to feel defeated. It isn't just the king, but the cauldron and his angry, righteous followers that they're, like, against. Like, there's so much more to this than just killing the king.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if he's just going to be an illusion. Like, how are you even going to get to him?
But, like, at the same time, like, if you kill the king, you know, I feel like it's pretty safe to say that his followers will then leave you the hell alone.
Well, it's a good start for sure.
I mean, that's just my hint. Like, this, you know, it's just a maybe.
Yeah. They basically talk about it. They need allies, and Feyre tells him to move the High Lord meeting sooner, and they agree to move it to 3 days from now. And Feyre says that she loves Rhys, and he kind of marvels over thinking he'd never hear that from her. Like, obviously in the beginning of ACOWAR, he didn't think that she would ever feel that way for him. And she tells him the world should know how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
And not to hide behind their masks. And she tells him that he is selfless, brave, and kind, and more than she imagined for herself. And she kind of asks how he's going to act at the High Lord meeting. And she suggests that she thinks, like, they should all remove their masks, and the king knows about Velaris, so it's safe to say that other people are going to find out about it soon too.
Yeah.
And they should, like, show the truth of who they are as good people. So that, like, the other High Lords will maybe trust them. Which I understand where she's coming from. I'm just sad that he turned out to be such a good guy.
What? That he turned out to be such a good guy?
Yeah. I just, like, he was the villain for a while, and I'm like, he's not the villain anymore.
No, he is not. But, I mean, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. I guess he kind of had to be, or, like, the book would be different, which I'd also be fine with. But it just, I feel like the swing is a bit too far for me personally, but it's fine. Anyway, Feyre does doubt herself a bit because she's like, she knows she's young and inexperienced, and she's like, I know that maybe I don't have all the answers, but that's just, like, how she feels. But Rhys does agree with her. He does, like, think of how it'll be received, though, and he thinks that they'll be pissed that he was lying all these years.
Yeah.
And then he asks her, like, what she plans to do about her powers. Like, do they want to tell them that she has power from all of the High Lords? And she thinks they should keep that part hidden so they don't think that, like, they're now manipulating them. And I'm like, if you hide it, they're gonna find out sometime.
Yeah.
Like, this is there's no good coming of any of this shit. So she decides, like, she'll hide all of the powers except for the ones that Rhys gave her, and as High Lady, she would get powers anyway, allegedly, so she can show those.
Great.
She asks Rhys about Miriam and Drakon, but there's no trace of them, and Rhys admits he should have, like, set up a protocol for communication with them before they went into hiding.
No
which
shit.
is like, yeah. But they need them, and they need Vasa's army, which we already were talking about. Like, how does she even have an army? But I guess.
I know, it's the weirdest thing on the planet. Like, she's trapped, but yet everybody is still loyal to her. The human queens are leaving her territory alone. It's fine.
Yeah, don't really understand how that's gonna work, but ooh.
She's like a real life Odette from, like, the Swan Princess.
Oh yeah.
Minus the fact that she's not a swan, she's a phoenix. But, like,
yeah,
that's immediately what I think of when we talk about Vasa. I'm like, oh, real life Odette. Except it's
Makes
not
sense.
also real life because it's a
it's
book.
not.
But I
get
can
it.
pretend.
It's true. Okay. Rhys does tell Feyre, though, that he's still unsure if that's enough. Like, even if they get Miriam and Draken's army and Vasa's army, like, they still might not have enough to defeat Hybern. And then, because Feyre can tell that he's feeling so defeated, she pushes him back on the furs and straddles him and, like, starts undressing him. Which, I'm not even mad at that, but there's just, like, one quote that I don't love in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so she finds a big bruise on his stomach, and he says it's from a spear, but he's shielded. So it didn't hurt him that much. He ends up shielding the tent at this point so that nobody can hear them, which I'm happy about.
But, like, I just feel like in this universe, when you can smell whether somebody is
oh my
aroused,
god, stop.
I feel like sex noises, like, would be nothing to sneeze at. Especially knowing that when you have mates, you have this, like, frenzy at the beginning where you feel the need to take them on every surface whenever you want. So,
Yes.
like, I feel like while the shielding is appreciated, I also feel like everybody would expect it. So, like, is it necessary?
Yes. Like, yes.
Are you
I
sure?
close the door.
You can literally smell when someone's aroused, and you can smell when they're on their period. So, what's sex noises between people that can smell you anyway?
I don't like it.
And when
I
they
don't like
come
any of
out
this.
of the tent, everyone's gonna smell that they had sex.
Yeah, but will they, or will they just smell the normal amount of them on each
Oh,
other?
They'll definitely smell the sex. Come on. As a human, you can smell sex.
Stop. I hate it. Anyway.
Sorry.
She goes down on him, and this is the quote.
They hate?
Yes.
Okay.
His growls of pleasure filled the tent, drowning out the distant cries of the injured and dying. I don't think that's necessary.
You mean that they, like, have sex while there are people dying?
No, I don't. That part I kind of get. Like, you know, when you're in a heightened situation and then, like, you realize how mortal. I know they're not mortal, but how easy it is to die as a person. You're seeing people dying. I get it. I get wanting to, like, feel close, have sex, get a high. But I didn't need that sentence.
Okay.
And I get that, like, Sarah J Maas is trying to make a point about life and death by saying that, like, the death all around them and then they're living. is kind of what she says. And I do get it. And there's also a little part of me that's like, oh, maybe, like, Feyre is thinking that the magic that they get from having sex could help in some way. Kind of like
Calamai?
Yeah. I don't know. There's kind of like a maybe that's what she's thinking to it. But to me, I'm just like, I didn't need to think about the people dying around you during a sex scene.
Yeah,
I just didn't need that.
Oh.
I didn't need that in my brain.
Yeah.
It's not very hot.
No. To be fair, when you first started saying the line about his growls of pleasure, I thought that's the part you were going to have issue with.
Oh, no.
You don't mind a pleasure-y growl?
No, I don't mind it.
I just don't understand.
Especially with the shield in place.
I guess. I just don't understand a pleasure-y growl.
No, Roy Kent. He's saved
right.
my life.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so they have their little sex scene. I don't know. I think this is more so just like her giving back to him like he did to her last night, was it?
Yeah.
Earlier this week. I don't think they actually full on have sex, but
No.
I don't remember.
Oh, you mean when he rubbed her down with when he rubbed her down with with balms?
Yeah,
then,
but I don't know if they
ate
have
her out?
Yes. And now she's giving him a BJ.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have sex this time either, which is fine.
Yeah,
like,
it's fine.
She's just trying to make him feel better. I get it. Anyway. Cass and Az go with the Illyrians to the new, like, camp in the Night Court southern border. So I guess they're, like, camping out there because that's, like, closer to where Hybern would attack from if he were to attack the Night Court.
Yeah. They move around a lot in this book, like, with their army.
Yes. Nesta and Amren corner Feyre and Rhys and more when they show up, and Nesta asks what happened, and Rhys tells them there was a battle and they won. And you're like, obviously, that's not an answer.
Yeah. Not enough information.
Yeah. Amren basically says exactly that. She asks what happened with Tarquin, and Feyre says he didn't try to kill them, so it went decently, which is fair.
Yeah.
Rhys says he lost, that Tarquin lost people, but the royal family, including Cressida and Varian, are fine, and Amren, noticeably relaxes a bit, which is interesting.
I feel like we've been hinting at a Varian-Amren sort of duo for a little while.
Yes, we have. But we don't have any confirmation.
No.
But there was even
friends.
In the last book. Yeah. There was even some tension in the last book of some sexual hot tension between them. Nesta is still tense and asks where he is, and Rhys asks who, and she says Cassian. And I think Feyre even thinks that this is the first time that Nesta has ever said his name, which is interesting. But Moore says that he's busy, and they have a bit of a standoff. And Moore tells her that when Cassian gets back, to keep her forked tongue behind her teeth.
Insinuating she's a snake?
I guess.
Wouldn't a snake be like a backstabber?
No, I think she's more so don't be a bitch to him when he gets back. He's gone through enough. He's dealing with armies. Why do you even care type of thing. Rhys kind of cuts in, I think, to stop anything from happening. And tells Moore to send out notes to the High Lords saying that they're now having the meeting in 3 days and that they need to pick a spot and be done with it. So she goes to do that. And Amren and Nesta go back to training, and they're doing history of Prythian. Amren also tells Nesta that Cassian has gone to war many times and he's a general. And that this is nothing compared to what is coming. And Nesta just kind of responds that she doesn't care. You're like, You just asked about him.
Yeah,
I think you care.
You do care. You do care. You just gotta admit that you care.
Right? It's, yeah. So, Feyre and Rhys walk away to go get, like, a bath and food, but Feyre just says that she wants to go to the prison right now. And they're obviously exhausted, but they show up and, like, have to go through the getting there, which is obviously the hill and all that bullshit. Mm-hmm. But they get to the bone carver, and Feyre tells him to pick another object. But he says he desires nothing else, and then says that she's afraid of it. Which, obviously.
Yeah, it's apparently going to make her crazy.
Yeah. So they go back and forth a bit, and he asks for her firstborn. And kind of, like, gestures to himself, and Rhys knew that, like, he showed up to Feyre as, like, a little boy, mm-hmm. but he didn't know it was, like, their child, a visualization of their child. There's nothing else he wants other than their firstborn or the mirror, so they go to leave, but he wants his bone, obviously. Every time they come to visit them, they give him a bone. And Rhys throws him a chicken bone from lunch. And the bone carver's not really happy about that. Obviously. Feyre kind of realizes that she needs to get the mirror, but she's going to do it after the meeting, just in case it does make her go crazy.
Right.
Fair. Rhys asks her about the child, and she sends him the image of what the bone carver looks like to her, so their potential future child. They get back to the townhouse, and they go to the kitchen because they are starving, and Elain is there with Nuala and Caradwyn, and she's covered in flour and making dough, and Feyre kind of thinks that Elain looks happier than, like, she's seen her since she turned.
Right.
And the twins kind of explain that Elain was hungry and asked them to teach her how to make the food. So that's what they're doing. Helping her learn how to make bread or something. Feyre kind of feels some relief finally because she's thinking, like, Elain looks happier and she's finally, like, not just sitting looking out a window. So, like, this is a turning point likely in Elain's healing. Rhys just gets horny. Who knows why?
From seeing Elain make dough?
I know.
Like...
I don't think it's related. I think actually what it is he thinks back to the time that they went out to supper and Feyre kind of had her turning point in her healing and found the food delicious and was happy for the first time, and like he's like, I was so happy I could have cried because you finally looked like you wanted to live. So I think that's why. Anyway, they ended up going to their room.
We're bound to go wow wow.
Yes, but I think it's a fade to black situation.
Yes.
At breakfast, Feyre notices Nesta is looking for Cassian again, but she knows, like, he isn't going to be there. Amren tells everybody that Nesta is close to figuring her magic out, but she needs to unleash herself, which sounds sketch.
Is it more like she won't let go sort of a situation?
Yeah, I feel like she needs to be in control all the time, so, like, it's probably that she can't get a full grasp on her power because she doesn't want to lose any control.
Right.
But I don't know. Amren is also close to finding what she's looking for in the book, so that is good. So hopefully she'll be able to figure out how to fix the wall. Nesta ends up asking Feyre why she went into battle without a second thought, and Feyre just says she had to because people needed help. Which I think is kind of showing a difference between them as, like,
people?
Like, people, which I think we could see in the first book. Like, Feyre learned how to hunt because if she didn't, her family was going to die, whereas Nesta was like, let us die.
Yes.
I hate everyone so much that I'm not doing anything about it. So, like, it's interesting. But Nesta just doesn't even say anything back after that.
Yeah.
And
because she knows that this makes her a trash human.
Yeah.
As opposed to Feyre, who's like, people were dying, I had to help. And Nesta's like, yeah, it's fine. Let them all die.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just not her first instinct to be selfless, which is like, that's the same of regular people anyway. It doesn't make you a terrible person, but some of the things that she's done has made her a terrible person because she's chosen, like, obviously her attitude in the first book, not great. And like, even if your first instinct isn't to help people, then you still shouldn't let your kid sister go out hunting in the woods. Anyway, that's a whole thing for the Silver Flames book, I'd say.
Yeah.
So then Feyre just goes to her flying lesson. I guess we hear after that the High Lords all agreed to meet early, but not where. And we also get that they used to meet under the mountain, which is obviously a place that they don't want to go anymore. I think they like covered it up, didn't they? They like blocked it up or something. Yeah. I don't think you can go there anymore. And all the High Lords have agreed to meet, basically, except for Tamlin. And Amren and Nesta are staying home so that Nesta can figure out her magic. Mm-hmm. They end up deciding to meet at the Dawn Court, because it's near the middle. And I guess Dawn and Winter are near the middle. I'd have to look at a map. But Winter won't let people come in since Under the Mountain, because they had so many atrocities. They don't want anyone on their land. So they've decided to go to Dawn because it's kind of in the middle and they're fine with hosting.
Very nice of them.
Yeah. So the night before, they sit around and they're going over like all they know about the Dawn Court, because they are a little bit worried that this could be a trap as well. Like, what if Dawn just wants to kill everybody? There's so much going on with all of these High Lords, and I'm like, can't you all just band together for a better Prithian? Just like figure your shit out.
But I feel like we would say that with lots of people. Like, we would say that about tons of world leaders. Like, can't we all just get along?
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
Good job.
And no, apparently we can.
That is very true. So Amren tells them in a few more days Nesta will be able to fix the wall, which is interesting. Then the next day, they're all getting ready for the High Lords meeting, and Feyre wears her Starfall dress, and Cass calls her official and fancy looking, which is cute. But she's wearing a crown again, and it makes her think about all the other times that Rhys crowned her, which we talked about in the last book.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, it kind of makes sense. You're like, obviously.
He keeps putting a crown on you. We know what he thinks of you.
Yes. They apparently, Rhys and Feyre went to go look at all the crowns last night in like a secret treasure room, and there's like a wall of just crowns, and there's like glowworms lighting everything up. Oh, I love glowworms. They're so cute.
No, they give me the heebie-jeebies. They're worms.
No, I like worms too. They're cute.
Gross.
So anyway, she went to look at all these crowns, and he tells her she can pick one, and that they're hers. So she kind of like lets the crown call to her, which is interesting. I don't know if we ever hear anything more about it, but
I don't think so.
No. But the one that, I guess, called to her is silver and diamond, and it has a moon and star theme to it.
What a shock.
Night Court. Who would have guessed it?
Yeah. Wouldn't they all have a moon and star theme then?
You'd think so, but maybe not. Maybe not. So they're all just kind of getting ready to leave, waiting for everybody to show up so they can winnow to Dawn Court, and Nesta shows up in a gown, and it's the first time she's seen Cass since the battle. But they don't say anything to each other.
Of course not.
At first, at least. Nesta tells Feyre she looks beautiful, and Feyre then tells Nesta that she looks beautiful too, but she asks Nesta, like, why she's dressed up. And Nesta says that she's going with them, and she doesn't want to be remembered as a coward. And I guess, like, the battle finally made the war seem real, so she's agreeing to go and talk to the other High Lords and be like, I guess Tamlin is in liege with Hybern. Hybern is a terrible person. This is what happened to me, kind of thing. Feyre is actually kind of nice to her at this point. She says that, like, she's given enough. Like, she doesn't have to do this if she doesn't want to, which I think is nice of her. I don't
see anybody asking Elain.
Right? Nobody even gave Elain a choice. It's so dumb. Anyway, Feyre also says that Nesta should keep training if she's so close to fixing the wall. But Nesta says that, like, she was, I don't think she says the word inspired, but she was, like, inspired by Feyre battling for a court that hates her. And, like, if Feyre's going to do that, then, like, she can do this. Which I think is good. She also says that somebody has to care about the humans on the other side of the wall.
True.
Because it's super true.
No one 100%.
Does. Exactly. So Rhys then asks her to be emissary to the humans, and she says, like, she'll do this as a trial run, and she's also going to make him pay her a lot to do it. Which is, like, fair.
Yeah. If I knew somebody with that much money, I would make them pay me a lot too.
Exactly. If you want me to do something, money.
Yeah.
Before they leave, they all kind of, like, have a joking moment of when the fighting's gonna start, and, like, make bets on it, which is interesting since you can't fight during these meetings, but you know.
Well, not physically fight, but you can bicker.
Yeah, well, that's true. So they all get ready to leave, and Nesta and Cassian start to have a moment, and Feyre and Rhys stop winnowing to watch it, and I'm like, why? This is so awkward.
Yeah, but if you had two people that were, like, slowly getting together, and you wanted them to get together, wouldn't you, like, sort of peek and be like,
what's happening? Oh,
yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But it's still awkward. Yeah. She starts to say he didn't come to, but then she stops herself. And we know she was probably going to say he didn't come to see her when he got back. But then they just, like, stare into each other's eyes. And he does say next time he'll come to say hello. So, like, that's good. Feyre and Rhys winnow there, and it's, like, a beautiful castle in the clouds. And they all make jokes about how they want to redecorate to make it look like this. And then Rhys, like, tells Feyre through the bond that he wants her to just wear her crown to bed that night.
Woo!
So I just think he's always horny, which I guess is it is a fey male finding their mate thing. Yeah. So I'm fine with it. Elain from the day court.
Is that how you pronounce his name?
I think so.
Really?
Possibly?
No, I believe you. But, like, you know how you pronounce someone's name in your head, and then when you listen to the audiobook, it's completely different? Yeah. Elain.
Oh, it might be.
Like Helen, but with an I in there.
Yeah, I can't be sure.
No, you've listened to the audiobook, so you're definitely correct.
I could be wrong.
But, like,
easily be wrong.
It reminds me of that time when I first started reading Harry Potter, and
oh my god, Hermione.
I pronounced it Hermione.
I pronounced it Hermione. Or
At
something like that.
The E on the end.
Well,
it took me ages
around it.
to autocorrect my brain once I heard it in the movie to go from Hermione to go from Hermione to Hermione. It took a long time. So
it did for me too.
Okay, so if I make a mistake and accidentally say Hellion again, just correct me.
Well, I'm not 100% sure I'm right, so it's fine. I'm not saying his name again.
No, you have to.
No, I don't. Callias from the Winter Court, Thesan from Dawn, obviously he's hosting, are already there. So they're waiting on Autumn Court, which is Baron, Summer Court, which is Tarquin, and obviously Spring, which is Tamlin. So it takes me a hot second to get these names in my brain to know who's from which court. So I don't know if I'm completely right in all. Like, my brain's just like, a name. Anyway. So Feyre and Rhys and Entourage all walk in with their shields up. And Feyre tells Rhys through the bond that she loves everything he is. And he tells her she bows to no one. So, like, they're having a little, like, get what's that called? Where you, like, a mantra to, like, reconfirm your whatever that is.
I call it a mantra.
Yeah. So I think this is the first time that we're seeing Thesan's people.
Yes.
I think Feyre says that she kind of remembers him, but apparently his people have bird-like wings, and Rhys tells her through the bond that Amarantha once made a dress out of, like, their wings, which is, she's awful.
So, like, are we thinking, because I'm struggling with keeping, so we know the Illyrians have bat wings. Mm-hmm. The Seraphim, I thought they had feathery bird wings.
I think of their wings based on their name as more angelic wings.
I guess, but how is a bird, like, I guess to me, angel wings that are, like, feathery and bird wings are the same.
I kind of think, like, they're, like, pigeon.
You think of these people as having pigeon wings? Okay. Like little small ones?
Or like, you know, when somebody dresses up like the terrible, like, crow mascots that look ridiculous?
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey man, I'm here for it.
But I don't know. I don't know what anyone looks like. My brain can't handle it.
Okay.
Thesan's lover and captain of his guard, I guess, is a man that's sitting next to him. I guess we get that somehow. Anyway. And then as, like, the Dawn Court High Lord, he, like, welcomes them there. Feyre obviously kind of starts thinking about the gifts that she got from each High Lord as she's looking at him. His gift is healing. And his attention goes to Feyre, and everyone else bows, but she's a high lady, so she's not going to bow. And then Thesan sees her tattoo and recognizes what it means, so that she is a high lady.
So you think he was going to call her out for not bowing until he sees the tattoo and is like, oh shit.
I don't know. Possibly? Also, like, I get that she's his equal, but, like, he's also offering up his house and place. Like, it wouldn't be out of place to, like, respect him a little bit.
Yeah, like maybe a head nod. Like,
yeah. Like, I don't need you to, like, lie on the floor, but
like, kiss my shoes.
Yeah. So Thesan and Callias, I don't even know what I just called him, kind of approach them. Callias, yeah. Sorry, my brain stopped working. But before, like, any of them can start talking, Moore squeals, and she grabs, I lost it, Callias?
Yeah.
Callias? She grabs Callias's wife, Vivian, and starts, like, introducing her to Feyre, and it kind of, like, kills some of the tension in this room, because it was very tense.
Yeah.
Callias says he tried to suggest that his wife Vivian stay at home, but she threatened to freeze his balls off.
Ah!
Which I love, because they're from Winter Court.
Mm-hmm.
There's still some obvious tension between Rhys and Callias, but, like, the women or the females are kind of, like, talking normally and, like, gossiping. Like, Moore and Vivian are clearly good friends and haven't seen each other in a very long time. Vivian does thank Feyre for Under the Mountain and returning her mate to her. And Moore is like, you're mated? What the fuck?
Do you think, so I don't know if it's, I can't remember because I breezed over this. Do you think that the tension between Callias and Rhys, so like, in ACOWAR, Tamlin mentions in Feyre's presence that the Blight, which was Amarantha, killed a bunch of Winter Court children. Do we think that was Rhys?
Yeah, so he does.
Who does?
But Callias, they kind of get into it.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes up.
Okay.
Sorry, I forget where he's from. Oh, Day. So Hellion, Spellcleaver is what he's being called.
He's got a cool nickname.
Yeah, it's his cool nickname. Also has like visible tension with Rhys, and his eyes are cold as he approaches them all. And she knows that the light that she used in Highburn came from him. He looks at Feyre and asks if Tamlin knows what she is, Rhys's mate and High Lady. And Vivian hears him say that and is shocked to hear that she's a High Lady, but like Moore kind of takes her to the side to like have a conversation about it so that they don't interrupt the meeting anymore. Well, because it's
sort of like, well, how come I can't be High Lady then?
100%. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Which is so valid. True. Why can't she be?
She should also be High Lady.
But I don't really think it's the time and place.
Maybe not, no.
Rhys says if he arrives, we'll find out. And that kind of makes Hellion laugh. Anyway, sorry. Give me a second to fix my brain. Hellion then asks who Nesta is, and Feyre introduces her as her sister and emissary to the humans, and she'll tell her story when the others arrive. Thiessen asks who made her, because obviously they all know that Feyre used to be human, so clearly one would assume her sisters were also human, like how is Nesta Fey? Nesta responds that it was Highburn. Then Feyre says they threw her and her other sister Elain in the cauldron, and then she takes Nesta to sit, and she says after the High Priestess Ianthe and Tamlin sold out Prythian and her family to Highburn. And Nesta kind of just nods in confirmation. And Hellion tells her it's a very heavy accusation to make. So, like, I don't think any of them knew about this beforehand. Like, this isn't common knowledge. They're waiting for other people to arrive, and we get a bit of info on Vivian Callias. Vivian wasn't under the mountain. She and Callias were childhood friends, and he had loved her his entire life, and like as his power was taken away under the mountain, he like sent out a message to warn her, and he told her he loved her and asked her to protect his people. So that's what she did. Over the 50 years, she realized that she loved him, and basically after he came back, they got married an hour later.
I love this.
Me too. I love it. I'm getting goosebumps, which is so nerdy. I hate it. And then their bond snapped in place basically during the sex afterwards. And I'm like, I want their story. Like, I just want a little novella. But I don't, because I need so many other stories first. Like, it's very low on the list, but like maybe in 50 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm here for that.
Tarquin shows up next, and then Baron and all of his sons and his wife.
Wow.
And you can tell that Baron's wife is looking around for Lucian, and then lingers on Hellion. And that's interesting.
Yes.
The brothers... What could that mean? We'll get it next week. We'll get some more info next week. The brothers kind of leer at everyone, and it gets very tense. But Eris kind of reins them in when his father doesn't, which is, like, necessary, but also interesting. Like, clearly he's a leader, I guess.
Well, clearly his brothers are all assholes.
Yes.
They're all just dicks.
Yes. That is true. Rhys ends up, like, greeting Baron and his sons with, like, a taunt about not being able to catch his mate. And then, I can't remember, I guess it's Eris responds, mate and high lady, because they've just noticed it as well.
Yeah.
There are no empty seats now, so everyone's just assuming that Tamlin isn't coming.
Smart.
Right?
I would never do it. If I knew that my ex and their happy partner was going to be running a meeting, I would not go. I'd be like, send me the Cliff's notes. I'll stay home.
Oh, I'll decide later.
Yeah. Like,
it's
I would never, especially not having anyone to come with me. Like, if I had to go, I would try.
You'd take me.
Well, yes. But, like, you know, you need a date or something. You need to, because it seems like they're all bringing their significant others. So, like, do you really want to be the odd man out and not bring anybody? No.
Yeah. It's Akko.
It is Akko.
Yeah. So Thiessen, as the one who, like, is hosting this in his house, kind of throws it over to Rhys, who is the one that asked to have the meeting.
Yes.
So Rhys kind of starts his little pitch. He says that, like, Highburn is invading, and Hellion's like, so what do you want us to do about it? And he says, raise a unified army. And then Tamlin was in, alone and smiling like a wolf. So that's awkward. Everything is awkward. So everyone ends up reinforcing their shields. Feyre knows Tamlin and can see he is full of rage, which is not ideal. This is not a good time. And he's just staring at her and Rhys. Thiessen says he didn't expect him and asks someone to get him a chair, which they do, which is good. Baron says he's surprised that he's there. Rumor is his allegiance is elsewhere. And Tamlin is just still staring at Feyre with more hatred than she's ever felt before in her life from anyone. And he notices her ring and her tattoo and Rhys's hand on her knee, and he sits down and says, it seems congratulations are in order. It's so awkward. It gets worse, though, which is fun. Fun times.
Can it get worse?
Yes, it can. Rhys tries to just ignore him, and he tells Thiessen they can address the matter at hand after, and he's not in the business of discussing their plans with enemies. And Tamlin just responds, he's just in the business of fucking them. You're like, this is a YA book. It's not really, but, like,
sure,
yeah.
Just shove his trauma in everyone's face. It's a great idea.
Yeah. Feyre is in shock. Cass, as and more, are pissed. Obviously, it's just, Rhys responds, because he takes this all so well, because everyone keeps throwing it in his face, but he responds that it seems far less destructive than war. And Tamlin says Rhys started the war, which is an interesting take on what happened.
Did he?
Right? Did he? One of Tamlin's claws, like, comes out, and you're just like, how did you never learn to control yourself?
Because he's a pampered little prince, baby.
He says if Rhys hadn't stole his bride in the night, he wouldn't have been forced to take such drastic measures to get her back. And Feyre just says, the sun was shining when I left you. Which is true, but it's just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she should have come out and said, if you hadn't locked me in my room, in the house.
Yeah, if you hadn't have, like,
to leave.
re-traumatized me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Callias asks why Tamlin's there, and he says he bartered access to his land to get the woman he loves back from a sadist that plays with minds as if they're toys. So he's like, that's not wrong in his mind.
Right.
I get what he's saying, but what the fuck? You can't just be like, I let Hybern into my lands because of one woman.
Yeah.
Like, it's the trolley problem, but there's like 1 billion people here and Feyre here, and he's like, run over 1 billion. Like,
yeah.
just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Anyway, he does say he planned to find a way around the bargain when he had her back. Except Rhys had turned Feyre into one of them, and she destroyed his court over a grudge. Which, like, kind of true. But she also told him she was going to do it. Like, it's his own fault for not letting her live her life.
Well, that's the thing. She also said, I'm not coming back. Don't look for me.
Yeah. And she said, if you take me back by force, I will destroy your court.
Yes. It's his own fault.
100%. Feyre then tells him he can't just rewrite the narrative, and he doesn't even acknowledge her. And then he says the cringiest line of the entire book. And honestly, the first time I listened to this book, because I listened to it, I didn't read it, I was on a run, and I got to this part, and I stopped it. And I was like, I do not think I can continue reading this book.
Yeah.
In front of every High Lord of Prythian and their most important people, Tamlin says to Rhys, when you fuck her, have you ever noticed that little noise she makes right before she climaxes? I hate it.
Yeah. But see, this is what I mean. I don't see how anybody can want him to be redeemed, because he's just being the biggest asshole on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody who wants his redemption, why? He's being a grade A asshole.
I'm not against it.
Stop.
I don't like this line. It's a whole thing. Like, I think he needs to grow and become a better person and not be who he is. And that's how
so
he can be redeemed.
You just want a different character.
No, I think he can grow. I think he can be a better person. I think he needs to get over his trauma. I think he's lashing out like a little boy right now, and he needs to grow up and become a man. Anyway. Asriel's the one to respond, and he says, be careful how you speak about my high lady. And this is finally when Tamlin realizes that she is actually high lady. And he's kind of just like, oh, being married to a high lord wasn't enough. You wanted more power. That's why you left me. And he kind of brings up the time that she had asked him if she would be a high lady when they were in bed together. And he was like, no, obviously not. So Tamlin kind of turns to everyone and says that she laid his court bare to Hybern and warped his priestess's mind and broke her bones in spite, which, yeah.
She did do all of those things.
And he says that they want to take over as queen and king of Prythian. He's like, she clearly has ambition to, she wasn't, being his wife in spring wasn't enough. She wants to be high lady, and they both want to be king and queen. So, sure. And he brings up again Amarantha and how Rhys served her to stay unscathed. But, it's a really good angle. To be honest, he's playing this well. Sure. Which is exactly what Rhys says. He just laughs and says, well played, you're learning. Then Tamlin asks Callias why they are there and how they can even stomach working with Rhys since Under the Mountain. And they respond that they came here to decide for themselves what they want to do. Rhys just responds by saying he had no involvement in that. And Callias counters that he stood beside her throne while the orders were given. And he says he tried to stop it, but this is when 24 younglings were butchered. And Feyre kind of thinks that she forgot about this. Like, she heard about it. Tamlin mentioned it while she was in the Spring Court, but she still thought it was a blight at that point. She didn't realize what was happening, so she didn't really think about this. Rhys says that, like, not one day passes that he doesn't think of it, and Feyre didn't realize that. And she's just kind of realizing that, like, she doesn't know all of the trauma that he's dealing with, and it isn't just Amarantha's assaulting him. There's other things that he is haunted by too. Vivian says that she'll listen to him, tell them like what happened. She'll hear him out, and basically like, how did Rhys try to stop her? And they kind of, he tells the story, I guess, sort of. He says, like, Winter had rebelled, and she wanted Callias dead, and Rhys convinced her that was not the best action. She had killed the rebels, and Rhys thought, like, that was the end of it. But Rhys was confined, and he only found out when everyone else did that the children were killed. And they were killed by, like, shattering their minds so that everyone would suspect him. So he kind of thinks, like, Amarantha knew that he was trying to protect the High Lord, so she wanted them to have no reason to trust him, kind of thing. Vivian asks him where he was confined, and he says her bedroom, which is just so sad. Baron is being a complete ass during this. Like, not only do we have Tamlin, but we have Baron. And he's bringing up... He brings up Feyre using Claire's name. And then Claire better dying. And he also says Rhys tried to convince Amarantha with his cock when Rhys is trying to explain what happened. Yeah. And Eris does kind of shut him up, but, like, Eris is really keeping his father in line, which is, like, so backwards. But clearly, he's going to be a better High Lord if that ever happens. Cass, Az, and Mor, and even Feyre are all staring at Baron like they're going to attack him. Tamlin asks Rhys for proof of his story, and he says he swears on his mate's life that it's true. And then Callias, I guess, like, kind of looks Rhys in the eye, and I think starts to believe him, because he looks at Tamlin and asks why he's there. And Tamlin says he's there to help them fight against Hybern, and everybody obviously doubts him, but he offers information on Hybern's movements. And Tamlin says he once promised to fight against tyranny, and he looks at Feyre basically and says, like, she wasn't enough to change that. And then
so essentially saying, like, I'm still a good person.
Yeah, I still, because, like, they had that conversation where she asked if he fought in the war, and he was like, I was too young. Yeah. He was like, I'll always fight on the side that is against tyranny, and she thinks to herself that she can't even say that because she'll always fight for her family. So, like, I think in that situation, she's being more realistic, but it's kind of funny that Tamlin thinks he was doing that. He thinks he was fighting for his family because he really thought that she was his, which is so wrong and backwards, but it's like, they kind of switched, even though Feyre is still fighting for her family now. But anyway, he says he never was going to fight with Hybern. He was always going to be against him. And And then he calls Rhys and Feyre both whores, which is just, like, unnecessary. And Helion just cuts in and tells him he's being tedious. Tamlin presents them with papers, which is charts of armies, ammunition, and caches of Faebane. And he says that he's figured it all out, and they ask how they can be sure he isn't with Hybern and just giving them false information. And he kind of counters and says, how do you know that Rhys isn't fighting with Hybern? And Nesta actually says, you can't be serious.
I love it.
Which is, I know. It's just, she's so good at, like, cutting through bullshit.
Yes, I was literally just thinking that exact same thing.
Yeah, and Tamlin counters that Rhys only turned against Amarantha in the end when, like, there was a chance that they could kill her, basically. And that they were attacked by Hybern, but they made off well. So, like, Valaris was attacked by Hybern, but they're all pretty much okay. So, like, they orchestrated that. And he asks why the Night Court is the only one who received word of the battle in Adriata, and why they were the ones that were able to come in and be the savior, and, like, they somehow orchestrated that to, like,
I mean,
it's a reach. It's a reach.
Yeah, like, but at the same time, he is really working. He is doing a great job working this angle. Like, he did his homework.
He did, which is surprising because I thought he'd just be sulking.
Yes.
Varian then cuts in to say that he told the Night Court.
Like, yeah, dude, I told them. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's one thing that is taken off this list, but Tamlin says Feyre's sisters being turned is a good thing, and this makes Nesta laugh. And because obviously she doesn't agree, and she tells him that he is to blame.
Which, actually, I was expecting worse from Nesta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
you'd think.
I would expect her to, like, call him down to the dirt because she's so good at it. And I almost wish she would.
I know, but I'm also like, this isn't really the place for all of this. It's just so...
childish.
Yes. Well, and that's what Tamlin's doing, so I guess... anyway. Feyre's power is, like, rising, and she asks what he even wants. And she's like, do you want an apology? Does he want her? And he says he doesn't want spoiled goods. And he says, the moment you let him fuck you like a... And then his mouth starts. Also a terrible line. But then Tamlin's mouth stops working, and he's just, like, there like a little fish.
Yeah.
Trying to say words. And I love it. I fucking love it.
Yeah, somebody had to do it.
Yeah. And Feyre kind of thinks, like, Rhys is different. So he's a different kind of High Lord. He's more powerful than anyone in this fucking room, and they all forgot it until this moment. Like, somehow he has the magic to overcome any repercussions, if there would be any free... Like, using magic on somebody is attacking them. Like, yeah, so... It's just a great moment of everyone realizing how powerful he is.
Which I love.
Same. And that's where we end.
So yeah, I really like this week. I'm really frustrated with how it's ending, though, because they're right in the middle of, like, just them being right in the middle of this argument.
Yeah. Like, in the middle.
Yeah, I'm unsatisfied.
Yeah.
So
I do like how powerful he is and that everyone's realizing it, but it is right in the middle.
Yeah. And I just like, I just want to know, I just want somebody to put Tamlin in his fucking place.
Well, that's kind of what's happening. Yeah. So that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Co-Read.
so next week we will be reading through chapters 45 to 64 of Court of Wings and Ruin. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.